decisions about the design direction and the content that you add to the website have an enormous impact on performance. So you need to be making good decisions, otherwise the developer can't do their job. They can't perform miracles. Hello, my name is Paul Boag and welcome to another CXL feed. Today we want to talk about website performance, but not the kind of performance you normally talk about. We're not talking about conversion today, well, at least not directly. We're talking about how fast your website downloads. Because the performance of your website, the speed at which it downloads, has a profound impact on how well your website does. It affects three basic criteria, things that you really care about, things like findability, engagement, and conversion. So in other words, if your website is slow to download, Google de-emphasize it, which means fewer people ever make it to your website in the first place. So you will lose that valuable SEO traffic. Secondly, people will spend less time on your website if the website performs poorly and takes a long time to download each page. And crucially, if your website is slow, it will have a direct impact on your conversion rate. Now, there has been loads of research done into this subject, but just a little bit from Microsoft on this subject is that a 1 second delay in load time leads to a 7% drop in conversion and 11% fewer page views. So your conversion's going down, your engagement's going down. And also, 1 in 4 people will abandon a page that takes longer than 4 seconds to load. And that is even worse on mobile, where 74% of people will give up after a page takes more than 5 seconds or more to load. So performance is absolutely critical to the success of your website. Now, I know what you might be thinking at this point. That's the developer's problem. They're the ones that have to build the website and make it run fast. However, that is not the whole story, because your decisions about the design direction and the content that you add to the website have an enormous impact on performance. So you need to be making good decisions, otherwise the developer can't do their job. They can't perform miracles. But you might be thinking, well, everybody has broadband these days, so really is that such a big deal? But of course, cellular connections are notoriously unreliable and slow, so it's vitally important that we ensure the website performs as well as possible, because so many of your users these days are using mobile devices. So what are the worst performance killers? What are those bad decisions you might be making that are having an impact on the performance of your website? Well, a big one is video backgrounds. These seem to be very trendy these days. They seem to be everywhere, and yet they're a huge performance killer. Not only that, but they're massively distracting as well. So they tend to undermine the amount of information people retain and how long they spend on pages, because there's this constant movement going on. So think twice before you use a video background. I'm not saying they don't have their place, but I'm just saying that they are a big performance killer because they take a long time to download those videos. The second area is excessive font faces and font weights. So we could often end up with a lot of fonts on our website. It might be that you have multiple different font faces that you use. And again, nothing intrinsically wrong with that as long as you don't get too carried away. A couple of fonts, you're fine. But anything more than that, and you are going to start having an impact on performance, because these font faces can be big and take a lot of time to download. And you need to not just consider the font faces you use, but the different weights that you use. So if you're using bold and italic, and if you're using, different weights of those fonts and different variations, all of those need to be downloaded and they will impact your performance. Now, it might be that you want to look for what are called variable fonts, which are fonts that have been optimized so that they download much faster. But that's a conversation that you need to have with your developer. For now, all I'm saying is just be careful. Don't get carried away with all your fonts and your weights. Now, you could argue that probably your designer is working on that kind of stuff, and so you just need to tell them about it. But are you creating landing pages? Are you uploading content to your website? Because if you are, a big killer is unoptimized images. I took this image on the left straight out of Photoshop and it came out at 4.9 megabytes. That is a big file to download. But by simply running that through a little bit of software that compresses the image, I can reduce that by 10 times, right? All the way down to 0.48 megabytes. So compressing your images and giving them the attention they need before uploading them makes such a huge difference. Just resizing them to be the right size that you're actually going to use is hugely impactful as well. Now, there are all kinds of plugins and services that will do this automatically for you, but you need to be set up with them and you need to make sure that your images are as optimized as they possibly can. Another real killer is lots of interaction. So if your website has got, say, for example, a tool that allows people to customize your product, such as this baby stroller customization tool, then that will have a big impact on performance because it's downloading a lot of JavaScript and a lot of additional files. Again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be using these things, but think twice. What real value does this add? Does it actually improve conversion enough to offset the performance impacts of it? Now, I'm not saying you can't use a little bit of JavaScript to do things like have carousel or use tabs or that kind of thing, but just be cautious. And then there's excessive analytics tracking. We love to know about our users, don't we? And there's nothing wrong with having Google Analytics and maybe Hotjar, but don't get carried away. Don't start adding more and more stuff. And anything you do add, be very sure that the performance of that is well. Do a little bit of research to make sure that those aren't going to hold up your page loading in any way. So only use tools that are really well respected, that are known to perform very well in this regards. And then finally, social media widgets. Thankfully, these things are being used less and less on websites these days. But if you're going to create social media widgets and have those on your website, make sure you build your own and don't just pull in the default widgets from Facebook or Twitter or wherever else. Because that means that your website has to go off and get those additional files from Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and bring them into your site, and that will slow everything down. So avoid that. So I'm not saying don't do these things. I'm not saying that you should avoid having imagery on your site or video backgrounds or typography or anything else. What I'm saying is that you need to ask yourself a question. Can we prove that the benefits that we're getting from this thing outweigh the impact on performance? Because there is a very strong, very proven correlation between your site performance and conversion and engagement and findability. That is a known quantity. So my question for you is, as you add these things to your website, do you know that the benefits you're going to get back outweigh that performance hit? And with all of these things, most of all, the thing that I want to leave you with is discuss with your developer before you implement these things, before they're set in stone and agreed by everybody. Because your developer will be able to tell you what is going to have an impact and what is not. And your developer is going to be best placed to say whether something can be optimized in order to minimize the impact or whether it's going to be a deal breaker. So there you go, a few thoughts on performance and how you can make sure your site is not hemorrhaging users because it is too slow to load.